I want to ask you something before we begin. Have you ever helped someone thinking it was temporary, thinking you were doing the right thing, only to wake up one day and realize you had slowly been erased from your own life? Because that's exactly how this started. Not with shouting, not with anger, but with silence, with small things that didn't feel dangerous at first. The apartment over the laundromat hums at night, a low, steady vibration that seeps into the walls. Back when I first moved in, it drove me crazy. I used to lie awake thinking I'd never sleep again. But over the years, it became familiar, almost comforting, like a heartbeat reminding me I wasn't alone. I bought that apartment after 20 years driving city buses, 20 years of early mornings, late nights, people yelling at me for being late when traffic wasn't even my fault, 20 years of gripping the steering wheel while my back ached and my feet burned. But every Friday, I took a little cash and slipped it into an envelope at the back of my drawer. I wrote one word on it: later. Later was the dream. Later was the apartment. Later was peace. I didn't inherit anything. Nobody handed me a shortcut. This place came from missed vacations, from eating cheap, from wearing the same jacket year after year, from choosing overtime instead of rest. So when I finally turned the key and stepped inside, when I realized the walls were mine, the floor was mine, the quiet was mine, I promised myself one thing: no one would ever take that away from me. Or so I thought. My nephew Aaron moved in a few years later. Just temporarily, he said. Just until he got on his feet after college. He stood there with that half-embarrassed, half-hopeful smile. The same smile he had as a kid when he broke something and wanted forgiveness before he even asked. I said yes. Of course I did. He was family, and I had space. At first it was fine. He paid some rent. Not much, but enough to feel respectful. He cooked sometimes, left his shoes mostly by the door, called me uncle, asked how my day was. It felt good, like the apartment had energy again. Then his girlfriend started staying over. One night, then two, then weekends. Then suddenly she had a toothbrush in the bathroom. Then her friends, laughing too loud, talking like they owned the air, opening the fridge without asking. The fridge started filling with food I didn't recognize. Vegan stuff, energy drinks, leftovers in containers I never bought. And somehow, none of it was mine. They took long showers, steam fogging the mirror, hot water running like it was free. They left sticky notes on shelves. Do not touch. This is ours. Ours. I told myself not to overreact. They're young. Times are hard. Be patient. But patience has a way of turning into permission. And I didn't realize that until the night I came home so tired my hands were shaking. I remember that night clearly. My shift had been brutal. Traffic accidents. A passenger screaming at me. A detour that added 40 minutes. All I wanted was to sit down, to sink into my chair. My chair. The one spot in the living room that was mine. The chair that fit my body just right. The chair I sat in every night listening to the hum of the laundromat, letting the day drain out of me. I walked into the apartment, and it wasn't there. At first I thought my eyes were lying. I stood there blinking, looking at the empty space. The rug still indented where the legs used to be. Aaron was on the couch, feet up, remote in hand. I asked him where my chair was. He didn't even pause the TV. We needed space, he said. Like space was something he could take. Something shifted inside me then. Not anger. Not yet. Something colder. Heavier. That night, I didn't sleep. The hum of the laundromat felt louder. Sharper. Like it was vibrating through my bones. I stared at the ceiling, listening to laughter drift from the other room. Listening to someone I helped. Someone I trusted. Live comfortably in the space I earned. In the morning, clarity arrived with my coffee. And that's where this story really begins. Because I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I didn't explode. I planned. And I promise you, what came next was quiet, legal, and devastating. The thing people don't understand about patience is that when it finally runs out, it doesn't scream. It sharpens. That morning I sat at the small kitchen table, steam rising from my mug, the hum of the machines downstairs steady and constant. And I watched Aaron and his girlfriend move around the apartment like I was furniture. She opened cabinets without looking at me. He grabbed cereal I bought. They talked about weekend plans, concerts, trips, as if the space beneath their feet hadn't cost me 20 years of my life. I didn't interrupt. I didn't correct them. I just listened. And I noticed things. The way Aaron avoided my eyes. The way he spoke faster when he asked me anything. The way his girlfriend referred to the living room as ours. Not yours and mine. Just ours. That was the moment I knew. If I didn't act now, I would disappear completely. So I finished my coffee, rinsed the mug, and went to work like it was any other day. But it wasn't. During my break, I sat in the bus depot, plastic chair cold against my back, and I called a locksmith. I didn't explain my life story. I didn't complain. I just asked one question. How soon can you change the locks? That night when I got home, the chair was still gone. In its place was a cheap folding table, like a temporary solution, like I was the one passing through. Aaron barely looked up when I walked in. His girlfriend was laughing into her phone, feet on the couch, shoes on. I stood there longer than necessary, letting them feel my presence. They didn't. That was the moment something solidified inside me. The next few days, I became invisible on purpose. I stopped cooking, stopped cleaning shared spaces, stopped reminding them of anything. They didn't notice, because people who take rarely notice when someone stops giving. Friday came, and with it, my decision. I took the day off work. For the first time in months. Aaron didn't even ask why. The locksmith arrived just after noon. Middle-aged guy, quiet, efficient, didn't ask questions. As he worked, metal clicking, tools turning, I felt something loosen in my chest. By evening, the apartment had new locks. Solid. Final. I taped a written notice to the inside of my bedroom door. Clear. Legal. 30 days. No yelling. No insults. Just facts. I left before they got home. I went for a long walk. Past the buses. Past the streets I'd driven for decades. Letting the city remind me who I was. When I came back, the apartment was louder than I'd ever heard it. Aaron was standing in the hallway, phone in hand, face pale. He asked what the locks were about. I told him calmly. That temporary had an expiration date. He said I was overreacting, that I should have talked to him first. I looked at him, really looked, and I realized something painful. He thought he was in charge, because I had let him believe that. That night, he didn't sleep. I could hear him pacing, opening and closing doors, whisper arguing. The hum of the laundromat wrapped around it all. Steady, unmoved. The next morning, the first text came. Where do you keep the extra trash bags? I read it. Didn't respond. Then another. The sink is clogged. Then another. Why is the internet acting weird? Each message more uncertain than the last. Like the ground beneath him had shifted, and he didn't know how to stand. I watched from a distance, quietly, as control slipped from his hands. And the real consequences hadn't even started yet, because the notice was only the beginning. By the third day after the locks changed, the apartment felt different. Not to me, to them. I could feel it in the air, in the way footsteps slowed, in the way conversations stopped when I entered a room. Aaron started asking questions that weren't really questions, more like tests, trying to see how much ground he still had. How long are you really planning to do this? You're serious about the 30 days, right? You wouldn't actually kick me out, would you? Each time I answered the same way. Calm, measured, like a man reading the weather. I told him 30 days meant 30 days. No extensions, no drama. That calm scared him more than yelling ever could. His girlfriend didn't like it at all. She started acting like the apartment was suddenly hostile territory, slamming cabinets, leaving passive-aggressive notes, turning the music up when I walked past. One afternoon, she cornered me in the kitchen, said it was unfair, said family doesn't treat family this way, said Aaron was stressed because of me. I listened, let her finish. Then I told her something she didn't expect. This isn't your home. The words landed heavy. She stared at me like I'd insulted her, like I'd broken an unspoken rule. That night, she stayed over anyway. Long shower, loud laughter, testing limits. But the thing about limits is once they exist, they don't move. The texts from Aaron kept coming. More frantic now. Do you know where the breaker switch is? Why is the gas bill so high? Can you help me with the lease application? I didn't answer. I wasn't punishing him. I was letting him experience life without my quiet support. The kind of support he never noticed until it was gone. A week passed. The fridge started emptying. Bills piled up on the counter. The girlfriend stopped bringing friends over. Then one evening, I came home and found my chair back in the living room, placed carefully, almost respectfully. Aaron stood nearby, hands in pockets, eyes low. He said he was sorry, said he didn't mean to disrespect me, said he thought I understood. That word again. Understood. I sat down in my chair. Slowly. letting the moment stretch. Then I told him something simple. Understanding doesn't mean surrender. He nodded, but I could tell. He still didn't fully get it. The real lesson came later. Near the end of the month, the girlfriend stopped staying over altogether. The laughter disappeared. The apartment grew quiet again. Too quiet. One night, Aaron knocked on my bedroom door. Soft. Careful. He asked if we could talk. I opened the door. Listened. He admitted he couldn't afford a place on his own. That his plans fell apart. That he assumed I'd always be there. That was the truth. Finally, I didn't comfort him. I didn't shame him. I told him I loved him. And that love doesn't mean letting someone erase you. The move-out date came faster than he expected. Boxes lined the hallway. His life reduced to cardboard and tape. On the last day, he stood by the door, looked around, like he was seeing the apartment for the first time. The hum of the laundromat filled the silence. Steady, unchanged. He left quietly, and when the door closed, I locked it and stood there for a long moment, breathing, because what came next wasn't just peace. It was power. The silence after he left wasn't empty. It was full of space, full of breath, full of the kind of quiet you don't notice until you've been starving for it. The door closed. The lock clicked. And for the first time in months, nothing followed. No footsteps, no voices, no music leaking through walls. Just the hum of the laundromat. Low, steady, faithful. I stood there longer than necessary, hands still resting on the lock, letting the moment sink into my bones. Then I did something small, something simple, something that felt bigger than it should. I moved my chair back to its place, right where the light hits in the evening, right where my body knows how to rest. I sat down, and for the first time in a long time, my shoulders dropped. The days that followed were quiet, almost suspiciously so, like the apartment itself was waiting to see if the peace would last. I cleaned slowly, not because it needed it, but because I could. Every shelf I wiped, every surface I reclaimed, felt like restoring a part of myself. I threw away the sticky notes, cleared the fridge, reset the space. The apartment began to look like me again. A week later, Aaron called. I watched the phone ring, listened to it buzz against the table, then picked up. He sounded tired. Not angry, not defensive, just worn down. He said things were harder than he expected. That living on his own was expensive. That roommates weren't like family. I listened, didn't interrupt. Then he said something that almost made me laugh. He said, "I didn't realize how much you did." That was the revenge. Not the locks, not the notice, not the silence. That realization, that weight settling on him slowly. The understanding that comfort has a cost, and someone always pays it. I told him I hoped he figured things out. And I meant it. When the call ended, I didn't feel guilt. I felt clean. Weeks passed. The apartment stayed calm. The bills dropped. The fridge stayed full of food I recognized. Neighbors smiled again. The laundromat downstairs kept humming, unaware it had become my soundtrack to survival. Then one evening, as I sat in my chair, feet up, lights low, I realized something. I wasn't waiting anymore. Not waiting for respect. Not waiting for acknowledgement. Not waiting for someone to change. I had taken my life back. Quietly. Legally. Completely. And the best part, no one could undo it. People think revenge has to be loud, that it has to leave wreckage, screaming, tears, someone begging. But the truth is, the most powerful revenge is reclaiming what should have never been taken. Weeks turned into months, and life settled into a rhythm that felt honest again. I woke up early, made coffee, sat in my chair, listening to the hum below, not as noise, but as proof. Proof that I was still standing, that I had built something solid and protected it. Aaron called less often. When he did, he sounded different, more careful, more aware. Once he asked if he could come by, just to talk. I said no, not because I hated him, but because boundaries don't need explanations. And that was the lesson. For him, and for me. You can love someone and still refuse to be diminished. You can help without disappearing. You can be kind without surrendering your dignity. That apartment over the laundromat was never just a place to live. It was 20 years of sacrifice, of choosing responsibility over comfort, of believing that someday, later, would come. And when later arrived, I learned something important. Peace isn't something people give you. It's something you take back. So if you're listening to this, and you feel like a guest in your own life, if someone has slowly pushed you aside, made you smaller, made you doubt what you've earned. Let this be your sign. You don't need to explode. You don't need to justify yourself. You don't need permission. Sometimes the quietest move is the strongest one, and the steady hum beneath your feet, will remind you you're still here. You still matter. Now tell me, was that not one of the most satisfying slow burn revenge stories you've heard? If it hit close to home, drop a comment. Share your thoughts, your story, your moment of reclaiming yourself. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay with us. Because real justice, the kind that feels right, is always worth telling. And the next story is already waiting.